you had an interesting evening last night.
Yes.
So let's talk with our good friend Jane Iyer.
With our good friend Jane Iyer, and we had, she had one of her soirees where she brings in a guest, and you had been one before. I had been one. Now we believe these are too posh for Neil, so I don't know if he'll ever go.
Very true. He has been invited.
Very true.
Yeah, we're not sure.
But good friends of the show, Joanne Flynn was there sitting next to me. Chris Reed, the only CEO with a mohawk, was there. So it was a great event. Look, I talked about the bull market in politics that's happening everywhere in the world, but certainly happening in the U.S. and discussed who frames the election in this bull market in politics versus Democrats and Republicans is gonna win in the midterms.
Fascinating. Yeah. What do you think? What was the biggest question or the most interesting thing that people wanted to know about last night as you were sitting around that dinner table?
Well, I say, look, Elena, here's what the Republicans are going to do. And the Republicans have a much better hand to play. The Republicans are going to run on the mismanagement of Biden and the Democrats. They're going to say there's mismanagement when it comes to the economy, on runaway inflation, supply chain, gas at nearly $5 a gallon now. The domestic failures when it comes to the border and crime, the failure in Afghanistan, and of course the social woke lash. And what the Democrats are going to try to do, right, is say the Republicans are just too dangerous. Forget all of that. They're too dangerous when it comes to the woman's rights to choose. They're against civil rights when it comes to voting and immigration. They're against gun control. They're against climate solutions. And of course, Trump and January 6th. Well, most of the people there were like, well, do you think Americans are going to go with that Democratic framing that Trump is too dangerous? The Republicans are too dangerous. What will it take for Americans to say that's more important for me to vote on than the fact that everything now costs more and I'm having trouble meeting my budget because of all of the things that they will lay the blame on Democrats. So that was really the core of the discussion.
Isn't all politics local, though? Do people really care about the international stuff, like, let's say, Afghanistan, when it comes to voting? People are going to care only about what's in their pocketbooks. Do they have access to toys that they want to buy for Christmas or whatever? Like, isn't that really the general rule of thumb in politics?
And just to add to that, this is also playing out in the UK, that Boris Johnson, much beleaguered, is trying to play the Ukraine card, that he's at war. Firstly, Boris Johnson and the UK are not at war, but he's trying to play that Ukraine war card to separate from current issues. But it comes down to Glenn's point. People are worried about, in the UK, as they are in Singapore, supply chain issues, the cost of living, rising fuel costs. Does this other stuff at a certain point even resonate with the electorate?
Okay, think of the election, right, as you're a storyteller in a way. And if you can say that Biden mismanages everything and that Afghanistan is another part of that tapestry of mismanagement, right? He couldn't pull the Americans out. He couldn't get all of those Afghanis who had helped us over years, if not decades, and we couldn't honor our trust with them. And that's Biden's fault. So you play the Afghan card into the mismanagement of the administration, like you play inflation into this management. Now, Biden's going to say neither of those two things are true, and the Democrats will say that. And Biden's not on the ticket in 2022, right? It's the House and the Senate, so they're going to say that doesn't matter. It's about what the Republicans are going to do if they get in charge, and look what they're going to do. They're going to take away your rights, for a majority of the country when it comes to the right to choose. They're going to make the schools and the shopping malls and grocery stores and the streets unsafe because they refuse to do anything about gun control. So that's the question. So it's not about Afghanistan. It's not going to be about foreign policy, but they're going to use Afghanistan as one of the ways to make their case that the Democrats and Biden are mismanaging the country.
But here is the problem, Steve. Everything you have just said is coherent, intelligent, erudite,
as it always is,
reasoned, and balanced. And if the outsiders looking in know anything about American politics, it is none of those things. We are sitting here talking about reasonable political discussions when we have the hearings going on for the January 6 Capitol riots. A bipartisan Senate committee has linked 7 deaths to the attack. We're talking about 7 deaths here. And a claim being made that former President Trump was directly or engineered them or incited them in some way, and yet
and
here
certainly
we are,
didn't try to stop them.
right? And here we are saying that that man is not only going to I'm not say get away with it, but survive it. He is the key contender for the next Republican challenge, and yet we're talking about the Republicans arguably regaining the Senate while this trial is going on. To the outside world looking in, it's preposterous.
Well, and let's see what happens, right? I mean, that is the case that the House committee on the January 6th investigation is making. That this was the January 6th did not start on January 6th. It started right after the election, and Donald Trump was preparing this even before the election to make the claim that the election was stolen, even though there's zero proof that that's true, and that this is a brazen attempt by Trump to overthrow the government. Right. And Liz Cheney, and let me just say, I'm wearing my Colorado College shirt because not only do Bennett and Mason go there, but it's the alma mater of Liz Cheney, right, who is the vice chair of this committee, Republican from
famous
Wyoming.
Republican, right? Her father was in the administration.
Was vice president, right, under President Bush 43. And so what Liz Cheney said is, right, President Trump summoned the mob, he assembled the mob, and he lit the flame of this attack. And that there will come a day when Donald Trump is no longer, when he's gone. But the Republicans who continue to kowtow to him, who continue to play along with this, lie about the election being stolen, their dishonor is going to remain forever. And that's the question: is will there be enough Republicans who say we can't live with Donald Trump anymore? And the New York Post, which is owned right by Rupert Murdoch and News Corp, right?
Why did you look at me then, as if I'm related to Rupert Murdoch in some way?
He's part of the Commonwealth.
Exactly.
So the New York Post came out right after this, said like January 6th was not a protest, as Donald Trump says. Donald Trump said that January 6th represented the greatest movement in the history of our country to make America great again.
Of course.
The New York Post says it was a national shame. It's time for Republicans to move on. Donald Trump lost in 2020. Joe Biden is a disaster as president, and we need a fresh start. And what they said to the people, said, tune out the January 6 hearings, binge watch Stranger Things, pick a new favorite conservative, and look to 2022 and 2024. We need a new era. Let's make America sane again. That is Rupert Murdoch and News Corp saying this. So if that happens out of January 6th, maybe the Republicans, enough of them, will put Donald Trump in the rearview mirror.
Ironic, since Murdoch media was in large part responsible for putting out a lot of these a lot of the fake news that kind of led us to where we are today.
And 20 million Americans watched the hearing that kicked off, our Friday morning in Singapore. Look, only 9 million Americans watched the impeachment hearings. So this is, doubling the audience of who's paying attention. Now, of course, Fox News did not show the hearings live. They're the only network in the United States that did not show the hearings live. But it is hopefully going to get through, right? It's not just going to be, the Democrats who are watching this, but enough independents and independent-leaning Republicans who will watch.
And in my tribute to January 6th, I'm wearing my Planet of the Apes t-shirt. It's a tribute to the mob, the rioting mob, Planet of the Apes. Okay, where does this go from here? Presidents can't be charged, so on and so on. What is worst case scenario for Donald Trump and the Trump family? Do we see possible charges being laid? His daughter was speaking yesterday. There already seems to be a disagreement even between father and daughter. Rats sinking ships comes to mind here.
Yeah. Well, what happens, or what you're referring to with Ivanka Trump, right? The Attorney General, Bill Barr, when he said he had 3 conversations with the president where he told him, this was not a stolen election. This was a fair election. You lost, and your claims are BS. He used the full word. He said your claims are BS. And then Ivanka Trump said that she respects Attorney General Barr, and I accept what he said. Now, Donald Trump said that Ivanka Trump was not involved in looking at this, at studying the election results. She's checked out. So he's throwing his own daughter under the bus now.
Exactly.
And so that's the question, is what's going to happen politically? And then, Neil, your question, what's going to happen legally? And there are so many violations of law that Donald Trump is being investigated for. Something is going to eventually get to a court of law, and he's going to have to testify, and then we'll see what a jury says. But there's a legal issue and then the political. And the politics right now look really bad for Donald Trump. they've looked really bad for him before, and he's survived. So you can't count him out.
Just for the benefit of Singaporeans and myself, from a legal standpoint, I mean, we're in murky, uncharted territory here. And this is all if, buts, and maybes. But should Donald Trump be found to be complicit in any way in the insurrection, is prison or conviction a possibility?
I mean, look, they have now, the Justice Department has now said that the Proud Boys have committed seditious acts, and so they are going to be, they have been charged with sedition.
Offshoot group that was involved in the.
It's a group of white supremacist terrorists in the United States, and you had the Oath Keepers as another such group. And and this is part of what led to the January 6th insurrection, during one of the presidential debates, Donald Trump told the Proud Boys, stand down and stand by. They took that as an order from their president, or the whole country's president then, to keep him in office no matter what, even if you have to storm the Capitol, even if you have to kill people to do this, even if you have to hang Mike Pence, which it was said on January 6th that Donald Trump said, well, maybe the vice president deserved to be hanged. That was some of the testimony.
Right. So are criminal charges a possibility?
Criminal charge now would be very hard to say that. You'd have to prove that Donald Trump's words led to that. They're making the political case that, and Liz Cheney walked through a 7-step political case, that it was Trump who spread the false information. He called the people to Washington. He told them to go march on the Capitol. He ignored pleas for assistance when the rioters and insurrectionists were attacking the members of the police force and others there. Whether he will go to jail for those issues, it would be tough, because you would have to show that he knowingly was requesting those things to occur, and he will say it's political speech and such. I don't think he'll go to jail for that, but he certainly will be investigated, and those who supported him and acted on it will go to jail, and they already are going to jail.
All right. Thank you, Steve. We'll keep following the result of those hearings next week as well.